Hey everybody, this is Phil Dixon. I just thought I'd take a moment and come on and talk to you about a little baseball. I'm sitting out here in Kansas City. We're about 90, right at 90-degree weather. Good baseball weather though. Anyway, I thought I'd come on and talk to you just for a moment. Had a few things I was thinking about today, and I thought you might find a couple of them interesting. But let me get a drink here. So anyway, I was thinking about a guy I knew. You probably heard of him before. A guy by the name of James Papa Bale. You probably heard of that gentleman. And I was honored and pleasured to know him for real, and not something I read about in a book, newspapers online, or something like that, watching a YouTube video. I actually knew the man, and I knew his wife real well, Clara Bell. She was also a big supporter of mine. So we're going back to the 1980s. So I thought I'd take you on a little trip down memory lane, talk about James Papa Bell. And I want to thank you for everybody who helped me to get my subscribers to go live. And so I'm going to start talking to you a little bit more. As you know, I do a lot of touring, and I go out and talk to a lot of people, lots of groups about baseball, because most important thing is trying to keep this history alive, and not just the Negro League history. And I think people look at me and they say, well, he's a black guy, he's talking about the Negro Leagues, that's supposed to be natural. But I'm a true baseball fan, so I can talk about all kind of things. If you notice, one of my books is the Dizzy and Daffy Dean Barnstorming Tour, Race Media and America's National Pastime. You pick that book up, you'll see the depth of my knowledge on the major leagues as well. So, and we've got some more things coming on that end too. But back in the 1980s, I was working on a book. Some of you might have this book right here, the Negro Baseball Leagues of Photographic History. You may have that book. And when I was putting that book together, I was trying to break a lot of ground. And whenever I write a book, I'm always trying to introduce new thought, a new way of looking at the Negro baseball leagues, a new way of looking at black men and as they play the game. But one of the things I was able to do in that book was a real testament to Clara Bell. I was down one time. I would go down on Saturdays down to Papa Bell's house. I get my car. I drive down from St. Louis, from Kansas City to St. Louis, and I go by their house. And it's one thing that's easy to remember where they lived, because they lived on Dixon Street, and my last name was Dixon. I think if theirs was Dickson, like that, but mine is Dixon. So I would go down, and that's what I would do. I would go down and talk to him, and I would talk to Cool. Sometimes I'd go by Tweet Webb's house. Some other players would come over. Huntley used to catch for the Buckeyes. He would come over, and he'd be over there a lot of times. And just different people. And I remember Clara Bell, we were talking, interviewing Cool Papa. She said, why don't you ever interview any of the wives? I had to think about that for a minute, because at that particular point, I wasn't interviewing any of the wives. And some of these ladies have been married to these ball players for 50 years. And the interesting thing was, whenever I would go down and talk to some of these families, the wife would be sitting there listening to the husband talk. And then she'd always chime in with some interesting stuff. And so when Clara Bell said that, it really rang a bell. And I said, Clara, do you have a good picture? I want to put you in my book. And so she went and got a photograph. And if you look at the Negro Baseball Leagues of Photographic History, you will see that she is in the book. And not only was Clara Bell a big supporter, Dorothy Harris, Vic Harris's wife, great supporter. Hilton Smith's wife, another great supporter. New Joseph, Beatrice Garner was his wife. She was another great support. I could tell you so many stories about the people I met and the people who really helped me. And I know even around St. Louis, when I used to go to St. Louis, Branch Russell, he played for St. Louis. He was deceased, but his wife was there, and she wanted to make some things happen. And there was a few other wives that were really, really into helping me promote this history. And because of them, a lot of what you read today came from them. And And they don't get credit for it, but if you read my books, I always try to give credit to the people who did some things to help promote this history, even though they may not get any recognition at all. I try to make sure that I at least mention their names because they deserve this recognition as well. I will mention that as I was working on my book, from time to time I would have questions, and I didn't really ever do a really formal interview with Ku Papa. I would just go down there. We just talk baseball. We talk baseball for hours, and we talk people and neighborhoods and communities and stories and all of that. So as I was writing this book, I remember asking Ku. I said, "Hey, look, Ku," I said, "from time to time I'll get a question. Can I just go ahead and call you, and then you just give me the answer? We don't have to do a formal interview." He thought that was a great idea. So I was going through the day, and I have this file here. And so I was just kind of reviewing it, and I thought maybe this would be an interesting thing to do. And what would happen is I would call Ku, and I'd have one question. And so, I write them down on sticky notes. And this was one, Ku Papa Bell. Evidently, I asked him where he started. And he started, he said, with the Compton Hill Cubs. He said, "I pitched and played the outfield." And then he says, the East St. Louis Cubs played at the St. Louis Giants and beat them 8-1. He said, and I struck out 8 people. And he goes on in this little clip here talking about the St. Louis Compton Hill Cubs. And another time I called him, I wanted to know about the owners of the St. Louis team. See, and this is just on this little sheet here. And he talked about L.A. Brown. He was a railroad man, and I thought that was interesting. They talked about Sam Shepard Sr. Said he had a bus line from Kansas City to St. Louis. Eventually sold out. And he said Dr. McCullum. He was a doctor, real doctor. And then he mentioned Dr. Keys. He was also a doctor. These are part of the ownership. And then, of course, he mentioned Richard Kent of the St. Louis Stars, and said he was in the cab business, a Star Cab Company. And I was able to get real precise type of information when I would call him because he would just focus in on that. Matter of fact, he mentioned that he had candy striped cabs, and he was down on Calumet Street. It was later called Calumet Cabs. So these little notes that I have, it's not your traditional file that a person might have today with a bunch of clips from newspaper online. These were actual things that I had. One thing that I did do that you might find interesting was I was talking to Ku Papa, and he mentioned that his original name was Nichols. And he mentioned when he came to St. Louis from Starkville, Mississippi, he had brothers there. And so his brothers, they all had the name Bell. So he ended up getting a job working with his brothers, and he went by the last name Bell. And so I started to write that his name was James Thomas Nichols Bell. And you'll see that in some of the bios, and that came from these conversations we were having back then. And so these are just a few of the things that I'll be talking about. I think what I may do is maybe I'll have a segment where I talk about some of the people that I knew. And then maybe on another day, maybe I'll talk about a chapter from my book. And on another day, maybe a chapter from someone else's book, because I'm always reading the books. Some books are real enterprising. They bring a lot of good new information. And unfortunately, some books are just the same cup of coffee warmed over, produced by another company. So I can let you know about those books and the information in those books. I don't know if anybody's doing that, but I'll be happy to do it. So, and if you have an idea for a continuous segment that I can do, by all means, let me know, because I will be happy to do that. And and I'll come on 3 or 4 times a week, and we'll accomplish some real things. I'm all about history. I'm all about the baseball history. I'm about African American history. Anything that comes under that banner, and that's a lot. I'm all into that. So I just want to thank everybody who helped me to get to the point where I can go live by 50 subscribers. But I think we're going to pick up a whole lot more subscribers along the way. But if you're ready to learn some information from someone who spent 46 years, starting when I was 23, being a baseball historian. Prior to that, I was a great baseball card collector. The first article ever done on me was about my baseball card collection. And at that time, I was like 18, 19 years old. So I was an avid baseball card collector, and maybe I can do a section on that. So a segment or something like that. So anyway, I'm just going to come on and talk to you. I'm not trying to be any super polished kind of a spectacular kind of speaker. We're going to be honest up front. And you guys, if you have like questions and you want me to, maybe we'll have a segment where, hey, I can answer your questions. We'll take a question and I will give you the answer in some kind of way. Or maybe we'll do something this day in baseball history, and I can go back and talk about some of the interesting things and that I have experienced and what I know about different towns and cities all over America. So, but today, this segment I've just been kind of giving homage to James Coup Papa Bell and his wife Clara Bell, and all the interviews and notes that I took from him over the years. And once again, they're all contained in this unique file that's in my collection. So thank you guys, and stay tuned. We're going to be doing a lot of great things, but it's only as great as you help me to make it. All right, so thank you guys, and you have a nice day. I'm going to sign off for right now, and I'm going to get out of this Kansas City sun before I get burned up out here. All right. You have a nice day.